He grew up believing that power solved everything. Money, connections, and a respected family name had always protected him. From a young age, he learned that people listened when he spoke, and they stepped back when he entered a room. No one ever questioned him, and if someone did, they were quickly pushed aside. Over time, this made him cold without even realizing it. He did not learn how to love, only how to control. She came from a very different world. Her life was simple, quiet, and full of small struggles. She had learned patience early, helping her family, managing little things, and accepting that life was not always fair. She believed that kindness could soften hearts, and that silence was sometimes better than conflict. She was not weak, but she had never been taught to fight back loudly. Her strength lived quietly inside her. Their marriage was not born from love. It happened because families agreed it was suitable. From the outside, it looked perfect. People talked about how lucky she was to marry into wealth and status. They said her life was now secure, that all her problems were over. No one asked how she felt. No one wondered whether she was ready to live in a house where respect was measured by power in the beginning. He behaved well in front of others. He spoke politely, smiled at gatherings, and played the role everyone expected. At home, things were different. His words were sharp, his tone always commanding. He expected obedience, not partnership. If something was not done his way, he made sure she felt small for it. He did not hit her, but his words carried weight. They stayed with her long after he walked away. She tried to adjust. She told herself that every marriage needed patience. She believed that if she stayed quiet, if she worked harder, if she showed respect, things would improve. She woke up early, kept the house in order, and followed every unspoken rule. She avoided arguments and swallowed her feelings. At night, when she lay awake, she reminded herself that many women lived like this and survived. Slowly, control turned into humiliation. He corrected her in front of staff. He mocked her simple background during family gatherings, hiding it under jokes that made others laugh. Each laugh felt like a cut, but she smiled through it. She did not want to be seen as ungrateful. She did not want to be labeled difficult. She kept telling herself that this phase would pass. When she became pregnant, she felt hope for the first time in months. She believed the child would change him. She imagined him becoming softer, more responsible, more caring. For a short time, he did act differently. He asked questions, showed concern, and spoke less harshly. She thought this was the beginning of something better. But as her body changed, his patience faded. He complained about small things. He disliked the attention she received from others. He accused her of becoming careless, even though she was carrying new life inside her. His words became heavier, his looks colder. He treated her pregnancy like an inconvenience rather than a blessing at gatherings. People praised him, calling him responsible and successful. They admired his confidence and influence. No one saw how he spoke to her when doors closed. No one noticed how she lowered her eyes before answering him. Her silence was mistaken for happiness. As months passed, she felt more alone than ever. She spent long hours by herself, thinking about her future and the child she was carrying. Fear mixed with hope. She wondered what kind of world her child would grow up in. She promised herself that she would protect her baby from pain, even if it meant enduring it herself. He, on the other hand, felt powerful. He believed she depended on him completely. He thought she had nowhere to go, no voice, no strength beyond what he allowed. This belief made him careless. He stopped hiding his behavior. He spoke harshly, even in front of others, knowing no one would challenge him. There was one evening that changed everything. The house was full of people. Laughter filled the halls, and music played softly in the background. She was tired, her body heavy from the pregnancy, her mind already exhausted. She moved slowly, trying not to draw attention. Something small went wrong. A minor mistake, nothing important. But he reacted as if it were an insult. His voice rose. The room grew quiet. All eyes turned toward them. She stood, frozen, unsure what to do. He continued, his words sharp and humiliating. He questioned her worth, her background, her ability to be his wife. She felt the room spinning. Her heart pounded. She wanted to speak, to explain, but her voice refused to come out. In that moment, she realized that no amount of patience would ever change him. The hope she had held onto for months cracked. People watched. Some felt uncomfortable. Others looked away. No one stepped forward. Silence protected him, not her. She felt smaller than ever, but inside, something hardened. It was not anger. It was clarity. That night, she did not cry loudly. She did not argue. She lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of her own breathing. Her hands rested on her stomach, feeling the gentle movement inside. She whispered a promise to herself and to the life she carried. This would not be the end of her story. He slept peacefully, unaware that something had shifted. He believed he still had control. He did not know that the woman he thought he owned was already beginning to let go. Part 1 ends with her standing at a silent crossroads. One path was familiar, filled with humiliation and fear. The other was unknown, painful, and frightening. She did not yet know how she would survive it. But for the first time, she knew she would try. The days after that night moved slowly, as if time itself had become heavy. She woke up each morning with the same routine, but something inside her had changed. Her body was tired, her back ached, and her steps were slower now. The pregnancy had reached its final stage, and every movement reminded her how close she was to giving birth. Yet it was not the physical pain that weighed on her the most. It was the silence that followed humiliation. He acted as if nothing had happened. He left the house on time, spoke normally on the phone, and laughed with people outside. At home, he barely looked at her. To him, the incident was over. To her, it replayed again and again in her mind. Every word he had spoken in front of others echoed loudly when she was alone. She stopped expecting kindness. She stopped hoping for change. Instead, she focused on getting through each day without breaking down. She spent more time sitting quietly, one hand resting on her stomach, feeling the slow, steady movements inside. Those movements became her comfort. They reminded her that she was not alone. The house felt colder now. Even when people were around, she felt invisible. Conversations happened around her, not with her. Decisions were made without her voice. She realized that her presence was tolerated, not valued. At night, sleep became difficult. She would lie awake, listening to distant sounds, her thoughts racing. She worried about the future. She worried about the child she was about to bring into this environment. Fear crept into her heart, but so did determination. She did not want her child to grow up watching their mother being disrespected. One evening, she gathered the courage to speak. Her voice was soft, almost unsure. She mentioned how tired she felt and how difficult the pregnancy had become. He barely listened. His response was quick and dismissive. He told her that women had been giving birth for centuries and that she was not special. His words were not loud, but they were sharp enough to hurt. That was the moment she stopped explaining herself. She realized that no amount of reasoning would make him understand. He did not want to understand. Control had become natural to him, and empathy felt unnecessary. As the days passed, her health became weaker. Simple tasks left her breathless. She asked for help, but it was rarely given willingly. Sometimes it came with complaints, sometimes with sarcasm. She learned to manage on her own. The people around them noticed her condition but said nothing. Some felt sympathy, others chose comfort over courage. Silence remained his strongest shield. Then came the day when her body finally gave a clear warning. She felt a sharp pain that stopped her mid-step. Her heart raced. She held onto the nearest surface, breathing slowly, trying to stay calm. Fear washed over her, not for herself, but for the life inside her. When she told him, his reaction was irritation rather than concern. He accused her of exaggerating. He said she was trying to get attention. Only when the pain returned, stronger this time, did he finally agree to take her seriously. The journey that followed was tense and quiet. No comforting words were spoken. No reassuring touch was offered. She stared out the window, watching the world pass by. feeling more alone than she ever had before. At the hospital, reality began to settle in. Doctors spoke in serious tones. Tests were done quickly. Faces grew concerned. She was asked questions she struggled to answer because of the pain. He stood nearby, impatient, checking his phone, annoyed by the delay. Then came the news that shocked everyone. What was believed to be a single pregnancy was not. She was carrying triplets. The information filled the room with sudden silence. Even the doctors paused, understanding the weight of what they had just revealed. Her mind struggled to process it. Fear mixed with disbelief. She felt overwhelmed, her emotions rising all at once. 3 lives, 3 responsibilities, 3 futures depending on her. His reaction was not what anyone expected. Instead of concern, his face showed anger. He questioned how this could happen. He spoke as if it were a mistake rather than a miracle. The doctors tried to explain, but he was already pulling away emotionally. Complications followed quickly. The situation became critical. Decisions had to be made fast. She felt herself drifting in and out of awareness, her body exhausted, her strength fading. In those moments, she realized something painful but important. She could not depend on him. Whatever happened next, she would face it alone. When she woke up, everything felt different. The room was quiet. The light was soft. Her body felt empty in a way she had never experienced before. Panic rose in her chest as she searched for answers. A nurse gently explained what had happened. The delivery had been difficult. The babies were alive but needed care. Relief washed over her, followed by tears she could no longer hold back. She cried silently, overwhelmed by love, fear, and gratitude. She asked about him. The answer was simple and heavy. He had left after being told the situation was under control. Our work was more important, they said. In that moment, clarity returned. Oh, the truth was undeniable now. The marriage she had tried to save no longer existed in any meaningful way. Days passed slowly as she recovered. She was weak, both physically and emotionally. Every time she was allowed to see the babies, something inside her healed a little. Their tiny hands, their quiet breathing, their fragile strength gave her purpose. He visited briefly, distant and uncomfortable. He avoided staying long. Responsibility scared him now. The reality of 3 children felt too heavy for the life he wanted. She watched him walk away again and again, each time feeling less surprised. With every step he took back into his world, she felt herself stepping out of it. The decision formed quietly in her heart. She would not return to the house that had taken her dignity. She would not raise her children in a place where their mother was broken. She did not announce her decision. She did not argue or demand explanations. She focused on recovery, on strength, on planning silently. When the time came for her to leave the hospital, she did not go back to the life she once knew. With help from kind strangers and distant relatives, she chose uncertainty over humiliation. As she held her children close, she understood that the hardest chapter of her life was not ending. It was only transforming. He believed she would return. He believed she had no choice. He was wrong. Part 2 ends with her stepping into an uncertain future, carrying not just 3 newborn lives, but a new sense of purpose she never knew she had. The first days after leaving the hospital felt unreal. She moved through them slowly, as if walking through fog. Her body was weak, her emotions raw, and her mind constantly racing. Every cry of the babies pulled her attention in a different direction. She was learning to care for 3 newborns at once, with no routine, no comfort of familiarity, and very little help. The place she stayed in was small and unfamiliar. It was not comfortable, but it was safe. The walls were plain, the furniture old, yet the air felt lighter than the house she had left behind. There were no cold stares, no sharp words waiting for her. For the first time in a long while, she could breathe without fear. Nights were the hardest. Sleep came in short pieces, often interrupted by cries that blended together. She fed one child, while rocking another with her foot, her arms aching, her eyes heavy. Many times, she felt like giving up. Tears would roll down her face as she whispered quiet apologies to the babies for not being strong enough. But every time she looked at them, something inside her refused to break. Their tiny faces, their fragile bodies, Their complete dependence on her gave her strength she did not know she had. She reminded herself that they had survived a difficult birth. If they could fight, so could she. Money quickly became a concern. Medical bills, daily needs, and basic supplies added up faster than she expected. She had left with very little. Not because she was careless, but because she had been controlled for so long that she owned almost nothing of her own. She reached out quietly to people she barely knew. Some ignored her messages. Others replied with kind words but no real help. A few offered small support, enough to keep her going another day. Each act of kindness reminded her that the world was not entirely cruel. He tried to contact her. At first, his messages were short and demanding. He asked where she was and told her to return. When she did not respond, his tone changed. He spoke of responsibility, of reputation, of how her actions looked to others. Still, there was no apology, no concern for her well-being. She read his messages without replying. Each one confirmed her decision. The man she had hoped would change was still the same. Distance had not softened him. Motherhood had softened her, but it had also made her stronger. As weeks passed, her body slowly healed. The pain eased, but exhaustion remained. She learned small routines, learned how to manage feeding times, learned how to rest when she could. She stopped expecting perfection from herself. Survival became enough. Loneliness visited her often. There were moments when the silence felt too loud. She missed adult conversation, missed feeling understood. But she reminded herself that loneliness was temporary. Losing herself again would be permanent. One afternoon, while sitting near a window with sunlight warming her face, she made a quiet decision. She would not live day to day forever. She needed stability. She needed a future, not just for herself, but for the children who depended on her. She began searching for small opportunities. Nothing glamorous, nothing easy. Just honest work that could help her stand on her own feet. She found something simple at first. Work that could be done with limited time and energy. It did not pay much, but it paid enough to give her dignity. Balancing work and motherhood was overwhelming. There were days she failed. Days when she missed deadlines or forgot small things. Instead of blaming herself, she learned to forgive herself. Progress, she realized, was not a straight line. He continued to believe she would return. He told people she was emotional, that she would calm down. He waited for the moment she would need him. That moment never came. The babies grew slowly, each day bringing small changes. Their cries became clearer, their movements stronger. Watching them grow filled her with quiet pride. She celebrated milestones alone, but she celebrated them fully. Sometimes fear crept in. What if she could not do this? What if something went wrong? In those moments, she reminded herself of where she came from. She had already survived humiliation, abandonment, and pain. Fear no longer controlled her. She avoided places and people that reminded her of her past. It's not out of weakness, but out of self-respect. Healing required distance. One evening, she received news that surprised her. Someone from her past offered guidance, not money, but direction. Advice on how to improve her skills, how to plan better, how to think long-term. It was the first time someone treated her as capable, not broken. That conversation stayed with her. She realized how much she had underestimated herself. For years, she had been told what she could not do. Now, slowly, she was learning what she could. Her confidence did not arrive suddenly. It grew quietly, built from small wins. Paying a bill on her own, solving a problem without asking for help, making decisions without fear of being corrected. The thought of facing him again still made her uneasy, but it no longer terrified her. She knew that day would come. When it did, she wanted to meet it as someone stronger, not someone desperate. By the end of those months, she was no longer the same woman who had walked out of the hospital carrying fear. She was still tired, still learning, still healing. But she was standing. He did not see any of this. In his world, she was still weak, still lost, still dependent. Belief gave him comfort. It also blinded him. Part 3 ends with her looking toward a future she once feared. now determined to shape it herself, one difficult step at a time. Time did not suddenly become kind, but it became more predictable. She learned how to measure days by small routines instead of fear. Morning light through the window meant it was time to wake the babies. Quiet afternoons meant a short rest. Evenings brought exhaustion, but also a sense of survival. She was no longer just reacting to life. She was slowly shaping it. Her work grew little by little. It was still simple and demanding, but she became faster and more confident. She learned to organize her hours around the baby's needs. Some days were messy and loud. Other days felt calm enough to breathe. She stopped judging herself by impossible standards. Doing her best became enough. She began learning new skills whenever the baby slept. Sometimes it was late at night, her eyes heavy, her hands tired. She took notes, practiced quietly, and made mistakes without anyone watching. Each mistake taught her something new. Each lesson added to her confidence. Money was still tight, but it was hers. That mattered. Paying for groceries with her own earnings gave her a quiet sense of pride. It reminded her that independence was not about luxury, it was about choice. Her body also changed. Strength returned slowly. She took short walks when she could, pushing the stroller, breathing fresh air. With every step, she felt more connected to herself. The mirror no longer reflected only exhaustion, it showed resilience. The children grew stronger each week. Their cries softened into sounds she could understand. Their faces changed, becoming more expressive. Watching them respond to her voice filled her with warmth. She learned their differences, their rhythms, their needs. They were not just her responsibility, they were her companions. Sometimes memories from her past returned unexpectedly. A tone of voice, a smell, a sound would pull her back to moments she wished to forget. When that happened, she paused, took a breath, and reminded herself where she was now. Healing was not forgetting. It was choosing not to live there anymore. He heard bits and pieces about her life through others. Some said she was struggling. Others said she was managing. None of it concerned him deeply. He was busy with his own world, convinced that time would bring her back. He believed dependence would defeat her eventually. One day she received official papers that made her hands shake. They reminded her of ties she thought she had cut. The words felt heavy, formal, and distant. Fear rose again, sharp and familiar. But she did not panic. She read carefully, sought guidance, and responded calmly. For the first time, she faced something connected to him without collapsing inside. That realization surprised her. It meant she had changed more than she thought. She started building connections with people who respected her boundaries. Not everyone stayed. Some disappeared when things became difficult. She accepted that without bitterness. The ones who remained valued effort, honesty, and respect. Those relationships felt different from anything she had known before. Her confidence became visible in small ways. She spoke more clearly. She made decisions faster. She trusted her instincts. When challenges appeared, she did not immediately assume failure. She asked, learned, and adjusted. The thought of returning to her old life no longer tempted her. Even during hard days, she knew she would not trade freedom for comfort. The past felt smaller now, less powerful. There were moments when exhaustion pushed her close to the edge. Nights when all three babies cried, when work deadlines pressed in, when doubt whispered that she was not enough. In those moments, she allowed herself to feel tired. Then she rested, even if only for a few minutes, and continued. She learned an important truth during that time. Strength was not loud. It was quiet persistence. It was showing up even when no one applauded. Opportunities began appearing in unexpected ways. A recommendation here, a chance there. Nothing dramatic, but steady. Each step moved her forward. She chose carefully, refusing anything that would compromise her peace. As her life stabilized, she thought more about the future. Education for the children, a safe home, a sense of belonging. She wrote goals down, not to pressure herself, but to guide herself. The idea of facing him again no longer felt impossible. She imagined it calmly, without anger. She knew that day would come. When it did, she wanted to stand with dignity, not resentment. He, meanwhile, grew restless. His life continued, but something felt unfinished. Control had always defined him. Losing it unsettled him. He told himself that time was on his side. He was wrong. Months passed. Seasons changed. The woman who once felt broken now felt grounded. She was not fearless, but she was prepared. One evening, she watched her children sleep. She realized how far she had come. She had crossed a distance that could not be measured in steps or years. It was measured in courage. Part 4 ends with her standing on stable ground at last, not waiting to be saved, but ready for whatever came next. The change did not announce itself loudly. It arrived quietly, through moments that felt ordinary at first. She noticed it in the way people listened when she spoke. She noticed it in how problems no longer scared her the way they once had. Life was still demanding, but it no longer felt impossible. Her work had grown into something steady. What started as a small effort had turned into a reliable source of income. She managed her time carefully, balancing responsibility with rest. She no longer felt guilty for choosing herself when she needed to. She understood that caring for herself was part of caring for her children. The children were growing fast. Their personalities were becoming clearer. One was calm and observant, another curious and restless, the third gentle but expressive. She learned how to meet each of them where they were. Watching them grow filled her with gratitude and quiet pride. She moved into a better place. It was still modest, but it felt like home. The rooms were filled with light, laughter, and safety. Every corner reflected her effort. It was proof that she had built something real from almost nothing. People around her began to see her differently. They did not see a woman who had been left behind. They saw someone capable, organized, and composed. Respect came naturally, without her demanding it. News of her life slowly reached him. At first, he dismissed it. He believed people exaggerated. He told himself that no one truly escaped dependence without his support. But the stories continued. She was working. She was stable. She was not asking for anything. This unsettled him. Control had always been his comfort. Knowing she no longer needed him felt like a challenge to his identity. He tried to reassure himself that time would bring her back. It did not. One day, circumstances forced him to see her again. The meeting was unavoidable, planned through formal channels. He walked in with confidence, expecting familiarity. What he found surprised him. She stood calmly, her posture steady. There was no fear in her eyes, no hesitation. She spoke clearly, without raising her voice. She listened, then responded with composure. He struggled to recognize the woman before him. For a moment, he felt exposed. The power dynamic he once controlled no longer existed. Others in the room noticed it too. The shift was subtle, but undeniable. He tried to regain control through words, reminding her of the past, of obligations, of expectations. She did not react. She acknowledged facts and set boundaries. Her calmness unsettled him more than anger ever could. That meeting ended without drama, but it left him shaken. He realized that something important had changed. She was no longer waiting. She was no longer dependent. For her, the meeting brought clarity. Facing him confirmed what she already knew. She had outgrown the version of herself that once accepted humiliation. The days that followed felt lighter. A weight she did not realize she was carrying had lifted. She slept better. She smiled more freely. Closure had begun. Opportunities continued to appear. She chose carefully, guided by values rather than fear. Each decision strengthened her sense of control over her own life. The children thrived in their environment. Their laughter filled the home. They felt safe, and safety allowed them to grow confidently. She watched them and felt certain she had made the right choices. He, meanwhile, struggled with regret. He replayed past moments in his mind, wondering when things had slipped beyond his reach. Pride kept him from admitting fault, but reality offered no comfort. She did not seek revenge. Her success was enough. Living well had become her answer. Another meeting followed, this time shorter. He was less confident. She was firmer. Boundaries were clearly drawn. The chapter between them was closing. She realized that power did not come from dominance. It came from independence, clarity, and peace. As she walked away from that final interaction, she felt no anger, only resolve. Her future no longer included fear. That evening, she returned home to her children. They welcomed her with warmth and trust. In their presence, she found everything she needed. The days after that final meeting carried a strange calm. It was not happiness in the loud sense, but a deep quiet that settled inside her. She felt lighter, as if a door she had been holding shut for years was finally closed and locked. There was nothing left to prove. Her life moved forward with purpose. Mornings were busy, but organized. The children had their routines, their small habits that made her smile. Breakfast was noisy, sometimes messy, but always warm. She watched them grow more confident with each passing week, and it reminded her why she had endured everything. Her work reached a new level of stability. People trusted her judgment now. They came to her for advice, for decisions, for leadership. She handled responsibility without fear. She knew her limits and respected them. When challenges appeared, she addressed them calmly instead of reacting emotionally. The confidence she carried was not borrowed. It was built through sleepless nights, hard choices, and painful lessons. She had earned it. He, on the other hand, felt the weight of loss more clearly now. Without her presence, his life felt unbalanced. Control had once defined him, but now it slipped through his hands. The people around him no longer responded the way they used to. Authority without respect felt empty. He began reaching out again, this time with softer words. He spoke of regret, of misunderstanding, of how things could be different. He tried to remind her of shared history. She listened politely, but her response remained firm and limited. The past no longer had power over her decisions. She understood something important during those conversations. He was not reaching out because he had changed. He was reaching out because he had lost control. That realization strengthened her resolve. The children sensed her calm. They mirrored it in their own ways. Their laughter came easily. Their trust in her was complete. She protected that trust fiercely. As time passed, situations arose that tested her strength. Legal matters, social pressure, and quiet attempts to influence her choices appeared. Each time, she handled them with clarity. She sought guidance when needed and made informed decisions. Fear no longer rushed her. People who once doubted her now respected her resilience. Some apologized quietly. Others simply adjusted their behavior. She did not demand acknowledgement. Growth was enough. He faced consequences he had never imagined. Isolation, regret, and the slow realization that power could not replace kindness weighed heavily on him. He watched from a distance as she built a life that no longer included him. One evening, she reflected on how far she had come. The woman who once believed silence was strength had learned a new truth. Strength was choosing herself without guilt. She also learned forgiveness, not for him, but for herself. Forgiving herself for staying too long, for doubting her worth, for believing she had no options. That forgiveness brought peace. A final attempt came from him, more desperate than before. This time, she did not engage. Silence was no longer weakness. It was boundary. Her focus remained on the future. Education for the children, a secure home, a life built on respect and honesty. She planned carefully, where that stability was created through consistency. The children reached new milestones, each one reminding her that time moved forward whether she feared it or not. She chose to move with it. She was no longer defined by what she had escaped. She was defined by what she had built. He eventually understood that the chapter was closed, not because she had punished him, but because she had moved on. The final chapter of her life did not feel dramatic from the outside. There were no loud celebrations or sudden miracles. Instead, it felt calm, steady, and real. The kind of ending that grows slowly, rooted in effort and patience. She welcomed that calm. She had lived through enough storms. Her days were full now, but not overwhelming. Mornings began with soft voices and small footsteps. The children had grown into their own little worlds, curious and fearless. They asked questions, explored everything around them, and trusted her completely. That trust reminded her every day that leaving had been the right choice. She had created a home where respect was normal. It's not something to beg for. Conversations were gentle. Mistakes were corrected with care, not humiliation. The environment she built was the opposite of the one she escaped. Her work reached a point where she could finally breathe without counting every expense. She was not chasing luxury. She was building security. That difference mattered. She invested wisely, saved carefully, and planned for the future with clarity. People around her often asked how she managed everything. She smiled and said it took time. What she did not say was that it also took pain, courage, and the willingness to walk away from what was familiar. He faded into the background of her life. Not because she erased him with anger, but because she no longer centered him in her thoughts. Occasionally, she heard updates through others. He was quieter now, less confident. Life had humbled him in ways words never could. She did not celebrate his downfall. She understood that bitterness would only tie her back to the past. Instead, she focused on growth. The children grew into stronger versions of themselves. School brought new challenges and joys. She attended meetings, helped with homework, and listened to their stories with full attention. She wanted them to feel seen in ways she never had. There were moments when they asked questions about their past. She answered honestly, but gently. She did not fill their minds with anger. She taught them about respect, responsibility, and self-worth. One evening, she watched them sleep. She reflected on the woman she once was. The one who believed silence would protect her. She felt compassion for that version of herself. She did not judge her anymore. She realized that control did not come from power over others. It came from understanding yourself and choosing your path without fear. Her life was not perfect, but it was hers. That ownership brought peace. Years passed, and the story she once feared became the story she survived. She carried her experiences with wisdom instead of wounds. In quiet moments, she felt grateful. Not for the pain, but for the strength it revealed. He never expected her to return the way she did. Not broken, not dependent, but complete.